Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the LBJ Ranch, and I hope you enjoy your stay and can bring the temperature up a little while you're here. I have today sent the following telegram to Honorable George Wallace, Governor of Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. Responsibility for maintaining law and order in our federal system properly rests with the state and local government. On the basis of your public statements and your discussions with me, I thought that you felt strongly about this and had indicated that you would take all the necessary action in this regard. I was surprised, therefore, when in your telegram of Thursday, you requested federal assistance in the performance of such fundamental state duties. Even more surprising was your telegram of yesterday, stating that both you and the Alabama legislature, because of monetary considerations, believe that the state is unable to protect American citizens and to maintain peace and order in a responsible manner without federal forces. Because the court order must be obeyed and the rights of all American citizens must be protected, I intend to meet your request by providing federal assistance to perform normal police functions. I'm calling into federal service selected units of the Alabama National Guard, and also will have available police units from the regular Army to help you meet your state responsibilities. These forces should be adequate to assure the rights of American citizens pursuant to a federal court order to walk peaceably and safely without injury or loss of life from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama. Signed, Lyndon B. Johnson. It is not a welcome duty for the federal government to ever assume a state's government's own responsibility for assuring the protection of citizens in the exercise of their constitutional rights. It has been rare in our history for the governor and the legislature of a sovereign state to decline to exercise their responsibility and to request that duty be assumed by the federal government. Governor Wallace and the legislature of the state of Alabama have now done this. I have responded both to their request and to what I believe is the sure and the certain duty of the federal government in the protection of constitutional rights of all American citizens. I have called selected elements of the Alabama National Guard into federal service. Additionally, I have military police put in position at both Selma and Montgomery, Alabama. In addition, we have federal marshals, FBI agents on duty in that area at this time. Last evening, I dispatched Deputy Attorney General Ramsey Clark to the scene to coordinate all the national government's activities. He is assisted by the very able Burt Marshall and John Doerr and some other dozen able lawyers from the Department of Justice. Over the next several days, the eyes of the nation will be upon Alabama, and the eyes of the world will be upon America. It is my prayer, a prayer in which I hope all Americans will join me earnestly today, that the march in Alabama may proceed in a manner honoring our heritage and honoring all for which America stands. May this, the conduct of all Americans, demonstrate beyond dispute that the true strength of America lies not in arms and not in force, and not in the might of the military or in the police, nor in the multitudes of marshals and state troopers, but in respect and obedience to law itself. In other times, a great president, President Abraham Lincoln, said that he was confident that we would be touched by the better angels of our nature. That is my hope for you and my expectation of all of you and my prayer to all of you today. A nation is molded by the tests that its peoples meet and master. I believe that from the test of these days, we shall emerge as a stronger nation, as a more united people, and a more just and decent society. I'll now pass to another subject, Vietnam. I want to announce this morning that Ambassador Maxwell Taylor will shortly resume his periodic visits to Washington for consultations on the Vietnam situation. He will return to Washington on March 28th and will remain approximately a week. There are no immediate issues which make the meeting urgent. It is a regular, periodic visit, part of our continuous consultation to make sure that our effort in Vietnam is as effective and as efficient as possible. Let me say this additionally on Vietnam. 1 year ago this week, on March the 1st, 1964, I made this statement, and I quote, "For 10 years, under 3 presidents, this nation has been determined to help a brave people to resist aggression and terror. It is, and it will remain, the policy of the United States to furnish assistance to support South Vietnam for as long as is required to bring communist aggression and terrorism under control." Our policy in Vietnam is the same as it was 1 year ago. And to those of you who have inquiries on the subject, it is the same as it was 10 years ago. I have publicly stated it. I have reviewed it to the Congress in joint sessions. I have reviewed it in various messages to the Congress, and I have talked individually with more than 500 of them stating the policy and asking and answering questions on that subject in the last 60 days. In addition, I have stated this policy to the press and to the public in almost every state in the Union. Specifically last night, I read where I'd made the policy statement 47 times. Well, I want to repeat it again this morning for your information and for emphasis. Under this policy, changes in the situation may require from time to time changes in tactics, in strategy, in equipment, in personnel. As I said last month, the continuing actions we take will be those that are justified and made necessary by the continuing aggression of others. These aggressors serve no peaceful interest, not even their own. No one threatens their regime. There is no intent or desire to conquer them or to occupy their land. What is wanted is simply that they carry out their agreements, that they end their aggression against their neighbors. The real goal of all of us in Southeast Asia must be the peaceful progress of the people of that area. They have the right to live side by side in peace and independence. And if this little country does not have that right, then the question is, what will happen to the other 100 little countries who want to preserve that right? They have a right to build a new sense of community among themselves. They have a right to join, with help from others, in the full development of their own resources for their own benefit. They have a right to live together without fear or oppression or domination from any quarter of this entire globe. So this is the peace for which the United States of America works today. This is the peace which aggression from the north today prevents. This is the peace which will remain the steadfast goal of the United States of America. On Monday, I shall have been in the presidential office for 16 months. Whatever the accomplishment of this period, no one knows better than I how much credit is due the ability and the integrity and the outstanding quality of the men and women who serve the executive branch. We have between 3 and 4 million people working in the military and in the civilian services. I believe the quality of talent and capacity in the top positions of the federal government and in the other positions as well is without parallel in modern times. This high level of quality is going to be maintained. I am determined that the American people shall be served by the very best talent available, chosen on the basis of principles and performance, not politics or speculation. Since November 1963, I've made a total of 163 major appointments through today. Of the 135 non-judicial appointments, almost exactly half, 49%, have been purely merit appointments made from the career services of the government or other government background. 14% additionally have come from university careers, 16% from business and labor, 19% from the legal profession. And I would like to add they have included both Republicans and Democrats. This week I was privileged to announce the appointment of former Undersecretary Henry Fowler to succeed Douglas Dillon in the Cabinet as Secretary of the Treasury. Today, Mr. John Macy has brought to the ranch 7 outstanding men, and I am nominating them to serve in positions of major responsibility. The press will receive detailed biographical information on each. I want to announce their appointments and present these gentlemen to you this morning. For the position of Federal Co-Chairman of the Appalachian Commission established by the act that I signed just a week ago, I've selected Mr. John L. Sweeney of Michigan. This outstanding young man served as the chairman of the Federal Development Planning Committee for Appalachia with great distinction and was a key figure in the developing the program that he will now administer. Next, on the Federal Power Commission, I am reappointing a public servant from the state of Vermont who has demonstrated his commitment to the public interest, Mr. Charles R. Ross of Vermont. To fill the vacancy on the Federal Power Commission, I am nominating an outstanding Republican attorney from the state of Illinois, a Phi Beta Kappa, a lecturer in universities abroad, a leader in young Republican activities, who is presently serving as the General Counsel of the Santa Fe Railroad, Mr. Carl E. Baggy. On the Civil Aeronautics Board, I am making a merit appointment of a career public servant who has served as chief of the CAB's 3 major operating divisions, Mr. John G. Adams of South Dakota. On the National Labor Relations Board, I am proud to announce the nomination of a former member of the working press, a registered Republican, who has served for 10 years as administrative assistant to the Republican senior senator from New Jersey, Mr. Clifford Clays. He is Mr. Sam Zagoria of New Jersey. For the position of Undersecretary of the Army, I am nominating an honor graduate of Yale University and the Yale Law School, a Silver Star Army veteran of World War II, a member of the New York Young Republicans, and now a member of a major New York law firm, Mr. Stanley Rizzo. I'm very proud of these citizens, and I'm grateful for their unselfishness. I wish to announce now the last appointment, Mr. Howard Woods of St. Louis, Missouri, to be the Associate Director of the United States Information Agency. Mr. Woods is a worthy journalist. He will be one of 2 associate directors for this very important agency. He will have special responsibility for planning USIA activities in underdeveloped countries, particularly those that are trying to build their communication systems so as to increase the contact of these governments with their people. As you may know, Mr. Woods has been the reporter, the columnist, the city editor, the publisher of the St. Louis Argus, St. Louis, Missouri. Mr. Carl T. Rowan, the director of USIA, has told me that he is increasingly, substantially USIA activities in countries such as Vietnam, which are caught up in the new style communist aggression. Mr. Woods will join us to help plan and direct this broadened program. So this morning the scorecard is 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 1 independent. And finally, because of the very considerable interest and discussion concerning the President's press policies, I want to give you some idea of what you may plan and what you may expect in the days to come. First of all, I regard my own responsibility in this field as making available to all of you all of the information that I can consistent with the national interest on as fair and as equitable a basis as possible. How and where I do that is a decision that I reserve for myself, and I shall continue to reserve for myself. Second, I consider it the responsibility of the press to report those facts to the American public as fully and as possible and in the best perceptive possible. The press, of course, also has the right and has the duty to comment on the facts in any way that it sees fit. But that is a right and not a responsibility. And therefore, I plan to see the press at many different times in many different ways, if you're willing. I will, however, try to follow the standing practice of holding at least 1 press conference a month of the nature which you describe, as ample advance notice, coverage by all media, full dress, even white ties if you choose. I do not intend to restrict myself to this as the sole form of seeing the press, but I will try to state it as a very minimum. Today marks the 39th on the record press conference that I have held. 18 off the record, our total of 57. I have had 18 press conferences with adequate advance notice, 16 covered by radio and television. 8 of these were live television, in addition to 3 live television joint sessions in the little over the year that I've been president. There have been other occasions upon which I have seen the White House press corps on an informal basis in order to give them some insight into my thinking. In addition to these 56 formal meetings, I've had 9 informal, lengthy walks with the White House press corps. Some of you who used to enjoy those walks when they were scheduled a little earlier with President Truman. And from time to time, those of you that do enjoy them will be invited back again. On various occasions, I've had conferences with pools representing the White House press. We had 173 airplane flights with pools where they were visited, 2 pool visits while I was in the hospital with a bad cold, and 1 pool visit in my bedroom in the executive mansion when I thought I was recuperating from it. I've had additional visits from 374 accredited press representatives at their request. In addition, 64 who requested meeting at bureau chiefs, plus 200 telephone discussions that I have responded to. There have been 9 other occasions where I have met with the press, ranging from a barbecue at the ranch to addresses made to the American Society of Newspaper Editors, the Associated Press Luncheon, and of course last year each one of the social affairs of the White House press conference and gridiron and so forth that numbered, I believe, 8. I have had 9 special appearances ranging from a TV interview with all 3 networks to special statements concerning Vietnam and the railroad strike. A considerable amount of my time has been spent with the press in this effort to discharge what I consider to be the President's responsibility to this country. I think that it is necessary to do this because the press is the media through which the American people are informed. And as I said, I intend to continue to bring them all the information that is possible and to see that every cabinet officer and every head of independent agency does the same thing. And so far as the President's concerned, I will continue seeing the press at different times, different places, in different ways of my own choosing. I'm ready for any questions.
Mr. President, your proclamation of this morning refers specifically to the 5-day period that the federal court approved for the Alabama March. Is that the sum total of time to be covered by your action with respect to calling up the Guard and authorizing use of troops, or would it go beyond that?
We anticipate that the march will have been concluded by that period, and we cannot tell at this time any reason why it should go beyond that. If it is necessary, we will take appropriate action, appropriate time.
So how many National Guardsmen you're calling to duty, and how many military police you have available in Alabama?
Well, for the moment, we have called up 1,863 National Guardsmen. In addition, we have approximately 100 FBI men. We have approximately 175 to 100 marshals that are present. Others will join them later in the day. In addition, we have 500 men in place from Fort Bragg that are now at Maxwell Field, Montgomery. This is, in addition to that, we have 509 men at the moment in place at Craig Field, Selma. On alert, we have a reinforced battalion at Fort Benning that can be there on short notice of an additional 1,000 men. One company can be ready to move and be there in a very few hours. The others are alert. These military forces are being placed under the command of Brigadier General Henry Graham, who some of you will remember is the Assistant Division Commander of the 31st Infantry Division. He was the Guardsman Commander of the forces that were federalized at Tuscaloosa. He is assisted by a regular Army man, Brigadier General James M. Wright.
I get the impression that you don't quite believe that Governor Wallace maneuvered you into this position only for monetary consideration. Wonder if you could tell us why you think the governor has done what he has done.
I don't want to leave such an impression, and I won't correct it if I have left the wrong impression. What motivates Governor Wallace is a matter that he can discuss with you better than I can. He has his responsibilities, and he's going to exercise them according to his judgment and his views, and I plan to do the same thing. I just repeated the statement that he made in his wire.
President, do you have any idea of the number of people who will take part in the march, and is there any federal service available to them for medical care or that sort of thing?
We are keeping in very close touch with the leaders of the march. We have reasonably accurate estimates of how many we think will be included. We have medical forces in the general area. They have been alerted to take care of any needs that may arise, and we hope and pray that there will be none. We have a 75-bed hospital with 5 doctors and 5 ambulances, 43 aircraft helicopters, 5 ambulatory patients, 2 litters with corpsmen. At Maxwell, this is located at Craig, Selma. At Maxwell Field, we have 250-bed hospital, 50 doctors, 5 ambulances, 4 H-43 aircraft. We trust that it will not be necessary to use any of these, but we have taken the precaution, and there's hardly a day passes but what the President is asked to provide medical service to some citizen where it's not available from other sources, and we do that to all instances where it's justified.
Mr. President, in your telegram to Governor Wallace, you referred to his discussions with you. Have you had discussions with him since this crisis developed, or does that refer to much earlier talks?
We have been constantly in touch with him, General Katzenbach and other members of the executive branch in Washington, and here. Since I received his wire the other evening, I have not talked to him and have not talked to any of his people, but our people are talking to him with regularity and trying to give such counsel and guidance as we think would be helpful.
Sir, West German arms supply to Israel, which was instituted with U.S. support, the West German arms supply to Israel, instituted with U.S. support, has been cut off. In view of this, would the United States be willing to supply arms to Israel to maintain a balance of power?
We don't discuss iffy questions like that, and we will give consideration to the problems and the needs of the various nations in the country, and while we have them under consideration, we will try to evaluate them. If a decision is reached in any area with any country, we will carry it out, but we don't think that it's desirable to speculate or to engage in any prophecies that may or may not work out.
Under the terms of the Voting Rights Act, does the administration plan to lower the literacy requirements if federal examiners are used, and possibly so far down so that illiterates could be registered in the South?
The administration has made its proposals in the form of the legislation pending before the House committee. There will be a number of amendments added to that, and a number of changes. My own personal view is included in the recommendations in that bill, which is available to you. I should have liked to have gone further if I thought I could have without the constitutional amendment, if I could have done it by statute. In other respects concerning voting, but the legal talent available did not think that we could make these additions. The final judges of just how far we do go in connection with literacy and qualifications of the electors will be determined by the two judiciary committees made up of lawyers and the other members of the Congress. Very frankly, I would like to have included in the message a provision that would permit all people over 18 years of age to vote. But the lawyers felt that that would complicate the matter and that it should be approached otherwise. But specifically answering your question, what final action will be taken in the bill that is sent to me will be determined by what's going on now, and I hope that they'll work every morning and afternoon and night, and that we can have legislation very shortly.
In the 6 weeks, sir, that we've been bombing north of the 17th wall, has there been any measurable change in the North Vietnamese support of the Viet Cong guerrillas in South Vietnam?
I wouldn't want to tell you or them or the country any of our evaluation of military operations at this time. We are being as effective and as efficient as we know how. We have our policy of responding appropriately, fittingly, and measured. And we're doing everything that we know to try to bring about freedom for South Vietnam and peace in that area. And that was the policy that General Eisenhower announced when he was president, when we assumed responsibilities there. That was the policy provided for, and the SEATO Treaty has passed the Senate 82-1, which obligates us to the commitment we've made there. That is the policy that was incorporated in the resolution passed August the 10th by the Congress. But to give a day-to-day evaluation of what effect this strike or that strike might have would not only contribute, I think, to confusion and perhaps it might be inaccurate, but would be ill-advised, I think.
space program stand in relation to the Soviets in the wake of their latest feat?
Well, we sent them a wire congratulating them and expressing our good wishes at the successful outcome of one of their tests. Administrator Webb is here today. He came in last night from New Mexico, where he's been on an official visit. I asked him to be here this morning. He and I have reviewed the Russian activity in space this week, as well as our own planned activity next week. The Soviet accomplishment and our own scheduled efforts demonstrate, I think, dramatically and convincingly the important role that man himself will play in the exploration of the space frontier. The continuing efforts of both our program and the Russian program will steadily produce new capabilities in new space activities. These capabilities, in my judgment, will help each nation achieve broader competence to do what they consider they ought to do in space. I have felt since the days when I introduced the Space Act and sat in bed studying Sputnik 1 and Sputnik 2 that it's really a mistake to regard space exploration as a contest which can be tallied on any box score. Judgments can be made only by considering all the objectives of the two national programs, and they will vary and they will differ. Our own program is very broadly based. We believe, very confident in the United States, that we will produce contributions that we need at the time we need them. For that reason, I gave Mr. Webb and his group every dollar in the budget this year that they asked for manned spaceflight. Now, the progress of our program is very satisfactory to me in every respect. We're committed to peaceful purposes for the benefit of all mankind. We stressed that in our hearings and our legislation when we passed the bill. And while the Soviet is ahead of us in some aspects of space, U.S. leadership is clear and decisive, and we are ahead of them in other realms on which we have particularly concentrated. If it's not an imposition on you and you care to, I haven't consulted him, but after the conference is over with, if you're not in too big a hurry to get back to the Driscoll, Mr. Webb will be here and he'll ask any questions you may want to ask.
Mr. President, to return to the Alabama situation, there has been an incursion of proponents of the civil rights measure into that area. It is also reported that there have been proponents of civil rights into the Selma area. There also has been reported that there have been opponents of the civil rights group. Do you know anything about the number of, say, extremists opposing this and what you can do about it, and how dangerous will this march be that begins tomorrow?
I think you stated the facts that are available to all of us. The people on the ground are taking judicious notice of the entire situation. We hope that we have taken the necessary precautions and we're adequately prepared to deal with whatever may develop. But I think it would be a great mistake to predict disaster. And I think that we have the people that have the training and that will carry out the normal police functions. And I hope we have the patriotism on every side of the question, all viewpoints, to obey law and order and to respond to my plea this morning that we conduct ourselves as law-abiding Americans who want to unite our country instead of divide it.
Do you feel that the debate in Congress concerning Vietnam, and especially those who have been urging quick negotiations, has weakened your position or this country's position?
I think our position is all right at the present time. I never know what any statement, what effect it may have on some other person. We have freedom of speech in this country, and that's one of the things that we have working toward. And I'm calling up the Guard last night. We have freedom of assembly, and I have observed no lack of it in the Congress at any time I've been there, 35 years. I have seen no restraints imposed by anybody. I have never discussed with a human being something he should say or shouldn't say on Vietnam. I think debate's healthy. It's good for us, provided it's responsible. And I think we have had debate. I've met with 520, I believe, congressmen and senators for over 2 hours, for over 11 nights, and each one of them could ask any question he wanted to. Secretary of State gave him a thorough briefing, Secretary of Defense, the President, and the Vice President. And as I stated, you've raised the question with me 47 times, and we've covered it very good. So maybe the senators and the congressmen have some speeches left in order to be even with us.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Came here because it was sunny, you know. We set up here because it was sunny. In this spot. There it is, right there. There.
of experiments, doing the ones that we find we can do best in the program. Now, we do have targeted dates for these. I believe that's the latter part of this year, but I believe it's the latter part, but it will be within about the next year.
One question I want to raise with you, I'm sure you understood it, but because we have X number of FBI, X number of marshals, or Y number of special military police and specialists in MP duties, and say 1,863 guardmen, doesn't mean that all of these people will be used. They're there, they're available, will be used if necessary, and they're there on a contingency basis, and they are unnumbered others that are alerted and able to perform any duties required. But you want the specific number that we have moved into self there. Now they're there, and I don't know how they'll be used. That'll depend on the Alabama general that's in charge of the operation. I don't want you to get the impression because there's that many they're going to be standing around up and down the road. I don't know how to use them. And he has made that necessary, and we don't care about getting specific on the exact number to be used because we don't know. It may not be. Hey, folks. Does it come what? No. We have different judgments, but I had the provost marshal under General Johnson of the Chief of Staff of the Army to go there and make a very careful study and make the best estimates that he could. And that's all a matter of judgment, but I have relied on the recommendations made to me by the men who have the experience and the training that causes them to be responsible for leadership in this operation. Yes?
Of our ability to maneuver the Gemini next week. Would you evaluate that compared to the Soviet spacemen outside the ship?
Yes, just as their work with a man outside the spacecraft is one thing we both want to learn. The maneuver of spacecraft, we both want to learn. It is very difficult because these vehicles are moving in orbit at 18,000 miles an hour, and it takes a great deal of energy to change them at all. And the efficient use of energy to do this kind of thing is why we have programmed these flights in the Gemini, and we'll be using all of that capability in the Apollo flights. Now bear in mind that this is the same kind of thing we do when we launch from orbit out to the moon and then correct the course of the Ranger or correct the course of the Mariner on the way to Mars. You have to be able to make corrections and to change course. You have to do it with a ship, you have to do it with an airplane, you have to do it with a spacecraft, but it's much more difficult. So this flight we are going to make is the first manned flight of a major new advance in spacecraft. The Gemini is not just a larger Mercury. It's a very major new sophisticated spacecraft that will give us the ability to do a lot of things with men and to learn what men can and cannot do, and will add vastly to our knowledge. Now one thing that I think the President will permit me to say so, that he has given us the go-ahead and has given us the resources to do. We have now mobilized under programs financed by the Space Agency about 380,000 men and women in America working on guidance systems and boosters and spacecraft and fuel and constructing facilities in which we can test these things on the ground before we ever send them out into space. So right now you've got a massive effort to prepare materials to prove out the design. We're going to do that on the ground in these major installations that we've built in the last 2 or 3 years. And at the same time, we'll be learning from the Gemini 2-man spacecraft what we need from flight, and all of that will flow into the Apollo lines. Now, the manufacturing lines for the Apollo ground system have already started to pour out the material for test. The ones for the flight equipment are just now forming, so this massive work and testing program will feed right into the production line for the flight equipment, which will be coming soon. This is not just something you want to answer yes or no. We have planned 15 flights with the Saturn V and the Apollo combination in order to accomplish
5,000 hours of manned flight experience out as far as the moon before we ever make an attempt at a landing. Now, we've learned a lot in the last year, and we believe we may be able to go on a flight earlier than the 15th. If we can, we still have a chance to do it in this decade. If it takes all 15, we cannot do it in this decade. But you just can't give a yes or no answer to a big program with this much involved. We're going to move as fast as we can and have a base from which we could speed up if necessary.
Well, I wasn't sure after I checked in with him last night and the voices I heard in the background and that anniversary party. I didn't know whether he'd be hale and hearty this morning. Well, another one. Well, I'll tell you. I have a secret. I'll let you in on that. He was having one last night. Good, good. Wonderful. I hope you have a wonderful. I don't think I'd change what I told George before we came, Sunday or Monday. If there's something that indicated that I should be there, of course I'd go on a moment's notice. I have nothing that's required here. I didn't, Ms. Johnson just came in this morning, and I spent a very long day and evening yesterday, and I'd like to get some of the sunshine if I could. Company with a lady running around over the hills, but we could go back after church tomorrow, or we could go back Monday afternoon. I must be there Monday evening. I have the governors coming in, and I have some meetings before that, so I would assume that we would be on the ground in Washington not later than 5 o'clock Monday, and perhaps more likely Sunday, because I just would probably some of them coming in won't see me, and I just may try to get some of that off Monday instead of Tuesday. There are going to be 40 more of them at the dinner and the briefing. We have completed the congressional briefings. We're going to have mayors now, and we're going to have governors now. We're going to have other public officials. We'll have private people too. We had a group of New York bankers the other day, and from time to time we'll have others not only on matters of particular interest like balance payments and Secretary of the Treasury, things of that kind, but we'll have business groups, labor groups coming in on things like Vietnam. We have spent about 45 hours in our congressional receptions, as we call them, about half of which, maybe 25, was given to statements and maps and questions and answers and repetition of policy. I don't think that our folks really do understand again and again. They hear people say, what is our policy there? And I want to emphasize what it is as much as I know how, because I think it's a good policy, and it's an American policy, and it's one of we ought to really make everybody aware of in the 10 years we've had, but maybe we haven't. And I think the congressmen are pretty generally in support of it. I think the senators, but we had a good many questions on it, and we've gone into these in considerable detail, even some of them involving confidential material.
Mr. President?
And there's been very few.
Is Lindenberg coming back to the university next year?
Well, I don't know. I never really know about the decisions of my daughter until they make them. Sometimes I think their mother, is a journalistic student, and there's a certain amount of independence in the family, and sometimes they think they're as free as the press. Lucy makes decisions that sometimes I read about, and Linda does too. I saw her press conference, learned some things from it, one of which is she's seriously anticipating coming back, but I think she said she didn't know whether they'd take her in or not. And I just don't know. I mentioned something to you all about Lucy the other day and got myself in deep trouble because she said the announcement was premature and made it in improper forum and under improper conditions and so forth. And so I'm not going to answer for Linda. I think it's a good bet, though.
How do you feel about having a new voter in the family?
Well, I think both of them, all through their life, have been very understanding and considerate. I think Linda will enjoy participation in government a little more than Lucy, but both of them have been rather active, and I think that if I could have my ambition, I'd just give anything in the world if Linda had a political career, but I don't know what she would do about it.
Mr. President, what are you planning to go to church tomorrow?
We don't ever do that until we kind of choose up in the morning, and we have Lucy and Linda and the fair represented while we hear them out, and we talk to Ms. Johnson, and we usually compromise by going to her church.
Mr. President, do you plan to do anything about this first day of spring cold weather?
She just came in, and I haven't talked to her, but if she's here, she can answer for herself, John. You know where you're going to church tomorrow?
I think we're going to Fixing Church Dollars, but we'll talk about it.
What did you say? Did you say something?
I did, sir. This being the first day of spring, do you plan to do anything about this cold weather in Texas?
I'm going to enjoy it. I enjoy being here and having all of you with me, and I have a deal of work to do. I must talk to all these men that are here and give them my general idea of modus operandi and the great responsibilities they'll face. And I want to finish with Mr. Webb. And I hope later in the afternoon when the deer come out about sundown, I can drive around and look at them. I did that a little bit yesterday afternoon, maybe a few minutes with some of my friends, and Marvin and Jack and I drove up and saw the pigs and see how our Iowa hogs doing and watched our new calves. But I guess you all didn't handle things like you should have, and I got involved later in the evening. I didn't get there. I went to bed early, but I didn't get to stay there long. And we were in the teletype business last night, and in conference, these things have to be, proclamation has to be teletyped down, all has to be typed, has to be reviewed very carefully, and then checked back, and questions that are raised, and changes that are made, and executive orders and so forth. And